In this lecture, we are going to work on selecting an image file as well as creating a function to upload that image to the Firebase storage. So let's go to VS Code, and there, for now, let's close these files. And what we are going to do is we are going to go to course component. So let me also close this auth folder and let's go to course folder. And in there, we have this add course component. And if we go to add course component.html, and if we scroll down, we have a field for selecting the course image. So here we have an input field of type file, which can accept image. And from here, I'm going to remove this form control name. Instead, I'm going to bind click event on this, and actually it should be change event. Okay, and here I'm going to pass a method to it. Let's say on file selected. So when a file is selected, we want to execute this function, this method, and there we are going to pass the event which has occurred. So here we are basically passing the event object. Now let's go ahead and let's create this in course component.ts file. Okay, so here I'm going to create that method. Here we are going to get a parameter of type event. Okay, and from this event, what we are going to do is we are going to select the selected file. So for that, here we can say event.target.files, and from there we are going to get the first file. So here I'm getting an error that files does not exist on type event target. So for now, what I will do is I'll set it to any, and what we'll also do is we will log the event object so that we will know the type here, what type of event has occurred, as well as I'm also going to log. So here I'm going to create a variable and I'll call it as file, and we will see if that file is selected or not. So I'm going to log the file which we are going to select. All right. Now currently, if I go to our application, and there if I click on this create course, and if I click on this browse button, it is not opening the file selector. The reason for that is this button we have created inside this input. Basically, we are designing it in such a way that this button appears inside this input of type file. But when this button is clicked, by default, it is not going to open the file selector. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a template variable here, and I'm going to call it as select file. And since it is a template variable, we need to start it with pound sign. And now what we will do is on this button, we are going to bind click event. And when this click event happens from the select file, so basically from the file input, we are going to call the click event like this. And here, let's also invoke it. All right, with this, let's save the changes. Let's go to our application now. And now when I click on this browse file button, it should open a file selector. Here, let me select a file and let's click on open, and let's open developer console. So you can see the file which we have selected that has been logged here. So we have selected this angular.jpg file. Name of the file is angular.jpg, and its size is this, and it is of type image/jpeg. So the file we can see logged here, and this event, it is actually of type event. So it has this target. If I expand that target, do we have the file property here? Let's see. Okay, here we have the files property, but for some reason I was not able to use it when I'm setting the type as event here. When I use this event, I'm not able to use this files. So what I'll do is I'll keep it as any itself. Okay. Anyway, we are getting the selected file. Now here, I will remove this line, this console.log statement, and also this console.log statement. So what we are going to do is here, now we are going to check if the file is present. So here we will say if file exists. That means if this file has a valid file value, then here I'm going to create a property. I'm going to call it as selected image, which is going to be of type file or null. And initially, let's set it to null. Okay. And inside this, I'm going to say this dot selected image equals this file. Let's save the changes. Now what we are going to do is, let's scroll up, and here we have this on create or update course method, and this method will be called whenever we are going to submit this form. So basically when this form is submitted, at that time we are going to call that function. So inside that function, inside this method, we are going to upload that image. So for now, I'm simply going to perform the upload operation for creating the course. So when we are creating the course, at that time, if we select an image, we want to upload that image. So for that, here what we are going to do is, first of all, inside this add course component class, we are going to inject an instance of Angular FireStorage. So here I'm going to create a private property called Firebase Storage, and it is going to be of type Angular Firebase Storage. Okay. Now here where we want to upload the image, first I'm going to create a variable called path. Basically in this storage, in which folder I want to store the images. So I want to store the images in the courses folder / images. And then we also need to specify the file name. So for the file name, since I want to have unique file names when we upload it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this date constructor, and on that I'm going to call this now method. So it will give us the timestamp for the current date and time, and to that we are going to append an underscore, and then we are going to use the file name. So for that, here we can say this dot selected image. So we have this property called selected image, which is going to have a name property. All right, so this is going to be the file path of the image which we want to upload. Now we are going to upload the image. So for that, we can use this Firebase storage instance, and on that we have a method called upload. To this, we need to pass two things. First, we need to pass the path of the image that we have in the path variable, and then we need to pass the image which we want to upload, the file which we want to upload. So that we have in selected image property. Now here, this upload, it is going to run asynchronously. Okay, it is going to return us a promise. So here, let's use the await keyword, and to use this await keyword, we also need to make this function as async, right? So here, let me create another variable, and let's call it upload task. And whatever promise this upload method is going to return, we are going to assign it inside this upload task. Next, once the image is uploaded, we are going to get the URL of that image. So for that, again, let's create a variable. Let's call it URL. And here again, we can say, so here we have this upload task. On that, we have this ref property, and on that, we have a method called get download URL. This is going to give us the URL of the image which we have uploaded to Firebase storage. Now what we need to do is, when we are dispatching this created course, there we are passing a course object, right? So in this course form, we have a course object. So in that course form, I want to update the image property. So for that, here I'll say this dot course form, which is a reactive form, and on that I'm going to use patchValue. And to that patchValue, I'm going to pass an object where I want to set the image property with the URL which we have received from the Firebase storage, the URL of the image which we have uploaded. And then we are going to dispatch this create course action where we are going to store the image URL. And what I'll also do is, just for testing, I'm going to log that image URL. So here I'm also going to log URL, and let me also log the course object just for testing. So for that I can say this dot course form dot value. Let's save the changes and let's quickly test it. So let's go ahead and let's create a new course. Let's say test course, and here let's provide a test description. Okay, let's say author is John Doe, price is 29.99, and let's also select an image. Okay, and here when I click on this create course button, let me clear everything. Let's click on this create course button, and here we have an error. That's because this is also going to run asynchronously, so we need to use this await keyword. Okay, so this get downloaded URL, this is also going to run asynchronously, so we need to wait for the response to come, and then we are going to assign the URL. With this, let's go back to our application and let's try it one more time. And before that, let's see if the file has been uploaded. So let's close this. Let's go to storage. So here you can see we have this courses folder. Inside that courses folder, we will have this images folder, and there angular.jpg file has been uploaded. Now I will simply delete it here. Okay, let's go back to our application and let's again try to create a new course. I'll simply put some dummy values. So let's say test 1 2 3, and here description should also be at least 10 characters. So here also let's say test 1 2 3 description, and then here author is, let's say, John Doe, price is 29.99, and let's select an image. Okay, and here I also want to show the image name that we will do in a bit. And when I click on this create course button now you will see that the course object has been logged. In this course object, we have the author, description, and we have the image URL of the uploaded image. So now we are going to save this image URL in our database along with other course details. That we will do in our next lecture. But in this lecture, we learned how we can upload the image to Firebase Storage. Now there is just one thing which I also want to do, and that is if I go to this add course component.html, there we have this span with the class file name. So when no file is selected, it says no file chosen. But now what I want to do is, if a file is selected, I want to show the file name there. So for that, inside this on file selected, what I'm going to do is, if the file is present, I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it as file name span. And here I'm going to use document.query selector. And there I'm going to pass the class name of that span where we want to display the file name. So the class name is file name. And then here I'll say file name span dot text content equals, and to get the file name, we can simply say file dot name. Okay, let's save the changes. Let's quickly check now if we select the file, if the file name is showing or not. So here we have an error and it says cannot set properties of null. Okay, what we will do is, before we try to set the text content, we will also check if the file name span exists or not. So if it is not null or undefined, then only we will try to set the file name. I mean, set that span, the text content of that span with the file name. Let's save the changes. Let's go back to our application. And now let's select the file. still not showing. Okay, that's because since we are using class name, we need to use dot here. Okay, let's try it again. And now we can see the file name. If I choose another file, then I can see the file name. So now everything is working, and we are also able to upload the image to the file storage. In the next lecture, we will see how we can create a course and add that course in our Firebase database. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.